Welcome back into the GSMC Sports Podcast, as we are now going to be reflecting back on this past weekend of NFL preseason games as we're recording this on Wednesday. I know we're a little bit delayed in it, but I wanted to make sure I was doing my due diligence because I don't want to just be handing out grades by looking off of a box score or anything like that. When we are talking about the NFL preseason, more than anything, it is about the process versus the results. So somebody might only have one tackle, but if they are impacting the game further from there, and there's one player specifically on this list that I would put in that category, I wanted to make sure I actually took the time to watch every single snap of each of the players that I'm going to be diving into. Now, that being said, we did offensive players on Monday. Today we're coming to you with defensive players and specifically fixating on the rookies. It is important to note that there were only 9 defensive players drafted in the first round of the 2024 draft, and only 4 of them played this past weekend. So we'll be going over the 4 that did in Byron Murphy, Dallas Turner, Chop Robinson, and Quinyon Mitchell. And then additionally, just to round it out to a clean 5, I included the first defensive player selected in the second round, and Rook Arororo, and talk about his performance as well. Now, very important also to keep in mind, like I said, it's more about the process than the results. We're talking about a preseason game with very limited sample size. So if a player has a bad grade in this game, it doesn't mean I don't think that they can be a good player. We're just reacting off of, again, pretty limited snaps. And that is especially important when taking into consideration the first player off the board defensively that did play this week in Byron Murphy II. Murphy is a player that you look at him and it just screams being an NFL defensive tackle. At 306 pounds, Byron Murphy is a mammoth. But he played more or less 2 drives. He was out for a couple plays on that second drive, and then he came back in on a short yardage situation on 3rd down at the beginning of the second quarter, but came right back out after that. Now, that short yardage play that I just referred to, that was where Murphy did record his 1 tackle of the day, but I wouldn't necessarily consider that a highlight. He was sort of knocked down to 1 knee, was just trying to plug up some space on the line of scrimmage to try and help the Seahawks defense rally and stop the Tennessee runner short of the line to gain, but that didn't end up being the case. Murphy gets credited for an assisted tackle on the play, but it was a mission failed essentially because the Titans did pick up that first down. And I thought that this was just a pretty bad showing from Byron Murphy. He just got pushed around way too much considering his size. Like I mentioned, 306 pounds, that is a lot of weight to move. And Byron Murphy, I am confident that eventually he'll be able to, again, he just kind of needs to eat space, and specifically in the run game, I'm sure that's where he can definitely carve out a role for himself. He has Mike McDonald, a defensive mind, as his head coach now, but he was getting moved in this game, and that was a big concern for me, because that's the one thing that Murphy cannot do. Didn't have much of an impact on this game. The pass rush was pretty much non-existent. And all of this coming as the Titans didn't play any of their starters. So these were backup offensive linemen that were moving Murphy. And it was pretty concerning. I'll say this, though. Again, you look at his size. He is capable of being a positive NFL player. I think that he's just going to need to become a little bit more technically sound and work on the fundamentals of the game, as opposed to when he was at Texas in college. He was just able to rely on his size a little bit more. I think it's going to take just a little bit of practice there. We'll see. This is a Seahawks defense that could really benefit from him stepping up again, especially in that run game. They need dudes in the front 7 to be able to stuff the run, but we'll see what the role ends up looking like for Murphy in the long run. Next man up, Dallas Turner of the Minnesota Vikings. Turner drafted 17th overall. in the 2024 draft. He played just 2 drives, I believe, versus Cleveland. It was 12 plays in those first 2 drives. He might have gotten a couple extra on the 3rd drive, but he just overall did not get a lot of opportunities in this game. He is a pass rush specialist, and he just didn't get many chances to show off his skills there. Half the time it seemed like he was having to drop back into coverage. He did have one key hurry on the 2nd drive where he stunted from the outside to the inside, coming back up the middle, took away the running lane for Dorian Thompson-Robinson, and if Turner just had another second, he was going to be able to lay the hit there. But, again, ultimately just based off of opportunities, didn't really get a chance to showcase his pass rush moves. I thought that overall in the run game as well, he was definitely being tasked with containing on the outside, so he wasn't allowed to be quite as aggressive in the run game. He did have one tackle that came as he was the read man on the edge, took away the option on the outside. Running back ended up coming up inside him, and he was at least able, maybe he could have been a little bit quicker reacting. Ultimately, again, he did his job. Don't let anybody outside. That's pretty much the number one rule you're told if you are a defensive end, and that was the case, so he did that. But he, on that option play as well, ended up tracking down the running back after a gain of a few. So, made the tackle. Maybe he could have reacted slightly earlier, but I still give him props overall for the day that he had. But again, just a lack of opportunities sort of has it hard for me to push his grade in either direction. So I'm just giving him a flat C. Everything was very solid, but not necessarily a standout performance from him. Next up, we have Chop Robinson, who ended up going 21st overall to the Miami Dolphins. Chop Robinson, coming out of college and coming out of Penn State, it was known that he was a little bit raw of a prospect in terms of his fundamentals, but the athleticism just jumps off the screen, and that's what I would argue is sort of the gist of how his performance went in week 2, where the reason why I have Chop Robinson a little bit down for his performance last week was because in the run game, he was struggling. He looked a little bit lost there. There was a string of plays on that 2nd drive where the Commanders kept running right at him, whether it was the inside runs where Chop Robinson sort of played it too far to the outside, allowed an easy block for the pulling offensive lineman to open up a clean alleyway up the middle for Washington. That happened a couple times, and even on one of those plays, Robinson came so far to the outside that he was almost able to weave himself back in and get a little bit of a surprise tackle, but not exactly, at least I'm assuming, and from what I know, not exactly a textbook way of how you would want to play that, but even still, the athleticism almost prevailed for him there. And then they followed up that stretch of inside runs by sort of baiting Chop Robinson to crash too far down the line of scrimmage, and Jaden Daniels ended up pulling it out to the outside for a pretty significant pickup. So again, the run game is where my concerns were with him. His strength is being a pass rusher, and he didn't get quite as much of a chance to display that. He did have a free rush on 3rd down that he was able to help hurry Jaden Daniels into an incompletion there. Again, with that athleticism, the big play that he did have in the run game, he was able to sort of shoot the gap in the offensive line and make a play in the backfield on his final drive of the game. Ultimately, maybe I'm being a little bit harsh. It's not totally fair to him because, again, I don't think we got to see all too many opportunities with him being a full-blown pass rusher. But overall, I think that Chop Robinson has a lot of room to grow, and that athleticism is what you want to key in on if you are a Dolphins fan and you want to have hope in Chop Robinson. Final first-round rookie we have is Quinyon Mitchell, the cornerback for the Philadelphia Eagles, who I thought was very solid in this game, where he played the entire first half for the Eagles. He got a lot of different experiences going from the outside to the inside. He started the game where he is probably going to be seen on this Eagles defense for the majority of the year at the nickel position, lining up on against the slot receivers. So that's where he started the game. The Eagles did sort of toy around with him at different positions. Second drive, he was sort of splitting time from when there were just 4 defensive backs on the field. They put Mitchell on the outside. They would bring in another man and sort of bump him to the nickel position. And then on the third drive, he was solely on the perimeter. So again, just different defensive alignments for Quinyon Mitchell as the Eagles are trying to evaluate what they have in him. This is a coverage guy, and ultimately thought that he more than held his own. He wasn't thrown at all night, which, on one hand, sort of feels like it deprives us of an opportunity to see what he's like, when he's targeted. But at the same time, the fact that he wasn't targeted means he did a pretty good job all the way through. I do think that on that interception that Jacoby Brissett had on the Patriots' second drive where Mitchell was on, he slipped a little bit, and it looked like he could have been beat by Demario Douglas of the Patriots for what could have been a touchdown. But Mitchell was at least on Douglas for the first portion of that play. Brissett sort of looked him off, and then Douglas got open a little bit more. That was a brutal play for Jacoby Brissett, but I do think that Mitchell could have maybe been exposed with a higher level of offense on the other side. But again, ultimately, he was very solid in coverage all night long. One thing for him, and again, he's a coverage corner. Stepping up in the run game isn't necessarily what the expectations are for Mitchell coming into the NFL. I'd like to maybe see a little bit more aggression, where specifically on the Drake May outside rushing touchdown, Mitchell was the man, the outside man on that play on the right side where Drake May ended up running, but Mitchell just sort of let himself get blocked into the end zone. Just a little bit more tenacity. It was a play that he probably wasn't going to make anyways, but it was a pretty soft play from him there. Ultimately, I'm giving him a B- because, again, the priority for him is being a shutdown corner, and I think that he has a very bright future in that regard. Some things he could definitely improve on moving forward, though. And then our final grade of the day, very limited sample size here as well, but Rook Arororo of the Atlanta Falcons, defensive tackle out of Clemson, ended up taking him 35th overall. Again, not a very defense-heavy draft this past year, but Arororo I thought was pretty good in the limited time that we got from him. Only 12 total snaps. His playing time is probably going to be limited his rookie year anyways. Atlanta playing in a 3-4 base defense, which means just 3 down linemen. Arororo is supposed to be the big man in the middle there, but he's also currently playing behind David Onyemata. And I think that Onyemata at this point, he's past 30. He's on the final fully guaranteed season of his contract, that opportunities are going to be available for Arororo long term. But as of now, this is probably, about what we're going to see. But I thought that he looked really impactful in the minutes that he did play. He had a great move to beat the starting offensive guard for the Baltimore Ravens in Andrew Voorhees, and ended up sacking Josh Johnson on third down of the first drive, so put that drive to an end. And then he was a part of the pressure against Johnson again on the next drive, stalling third down as well. So his impact was definitely felt in this game for a limited sample size. I am definitely interested to see what he has in the run game as well, but overall I'm giving Arororo a B. But let me know what your thoughts were in the comment section as to how some of these key rookies played. I'd love to hear any sort of recommendations for other players you would like me to look into as well. But as for now, that is all we have on the rookies from last week, something we will continue to be looking ahead at, but we are now going to be previewing the upcoming season for the Carolina Panthers and asking and answering some questions about the overall process of what is to come with Dave Canales and Bryce Young. So we will be diving into that, but first a quick break. Do not go anywhere. We will be right back.